Boom. We are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. This is Tio and the Arcane Bear. It is Monday, August 2nd, 2021. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the future of now. One of the exciting parts about learning is you're not always right, but when you are, you can pay off extraordinarily well. The idea of heads I win, tails I only lose a little is a beautiful analogy of how you can deal with asymmetry or convexity or concavity, I guess, depending on how you're looking at it, although concavity would probably lead to the idea of a negative convex effect. Anyways, some thinking there if you would like. What I'm going to do today is actually give a huge shout out to one of our private members. Now, you guys had been looking at Glasswalker's charts. I was leaning into it looking like distribution as well. And on July 18th, we have this in our private group. We have a section called peer review. So when you first join the group, you are given like an early student tag. And here, Hayley, she shared this post on July 18th, and it's really interesting to see. So for instance, we had been following Bitcoin, and we had this falling wedge drawn in here for pretty much the entire time, at least since June 21st, around here. Now, even though it was looking like it could be distribution here, we got a low volume spring at the very end of this falling wedge, and we broke up. So what Hayley had pointed out is like, hey, doesn't this look like the falling wedge scenario on the accumulation schematic 4? And this is one of the things that I love the most about building like a mastermind group. So is that, look, we're all learning. There's always a process of, hey, you're going to get some of these things wrong. The idea is to get more of them right than you get wrong, and especially get them right at the very beginning of a bull market, which there's a lot more time to figure out. So in our Wykoff accumulation ranges, we have accumulation schematic 4, which happens to be a falling wedge that as soon as it breaks out, it leaves you with this kind of upwards moment. And we had talked about this in all of our videos. Even though we were leaning towards distribution, we talked about if we close above this POC here, we are very quickly going to run to 40 grand, and that's exactly what we saw. So a big part of the conversation is the likely continuation of this bull market. Now, we need to stay above the middle of the point of control here, right? So the point of control is back down here at 34. So as long as we stay above $34,000, we're bullish, right? We are likely going to continue that bull market cycle that we had talked about. And we are only, let's see, approximately 75 days into this. So my original kind of assertion is that we would spend maybe 200 to 400 days in a sideways accumulation range with the potential of a downside effect somewhere between 23 and 19,000, probably is the lowest. I thought we could see a spring at the end of this falling wedge as well. So getting it exactly right is unimportant. The part of the thesis that has been the most successful is the fact that our interest here is basically to focus on long-term accumulation of any kind. Now, I go over this in all of my videos, and I want to make it very, very clear here because it's often so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and not recognize that what we're really trying to do is help prepare the individual for 10 to 20 years in the market. Not, oh my God, I'm gonna get in the market today, I'm gonna make a bunch of money, I'm gonna leave tomorrow, I'm gonna buy myself a Lamborghini and a yacht. Well, that can happen. You can actually get that lucky sometimes. I've seen it happen. It's not the normal, it is luck. But what's not luck, what can allow the average and everyday individual to do extraordinarily well is consistency throughout time. So again, we've ran this model in the past, and by just drawing it out, again, you take a monthly accumulation at whatever you can afford in your monthly budget, and you just buy every month on, say, the 11th. If you do that, even if you buy the high, you can ignore the price and end up with a really beautiful average price throughout time. Now, effectively, you could be doing that forever, right? One of the hardest things about being an early investor is, let's go back in time here to 2017, and let's say you bought yourself 15 Bitcoin or 20 Bitcoin at around this $300 to $400 mark, right? So it didn't cost you a whole lot. What happens is you see this huge monstrous run up, and you see the price of your portfolio increase, although the Bitcoin has stayed the same. And often what we get is almost like a buyer's or seller's remorse. It said, oh my God, I could have, if I had sold the top here and then a rebought back here, everything would be ho, dunk and dandy, po awesome, because I just turned my 20 Bitcoin at a very small entry fee of only 8 grand into almost $1 million in a very short order, right? Now, the important part is to recognize that tops are very short-lived. You had a very, very short period of time here to sell. But more importantly, if you had not sold and just kept actually buying and consistently continued to execute, you were setting yourself up perfectly for the next bull run. You could make a really good argument that if you're young enough, you should focus entirely on accumulation. You have your entire life ahead of you to buy and basically buy. But the downside is when you see that huge growth in your portfolio, it's the most money you had ever seen before, and then you don't sell it, you start to feel like you did something wrong. And I'm here to tell you, you didn't, or you wouldn't have. So for anyone that's new here, the most important part of the thesis you need to understand is that consistency of monthly buys throughout time is going to yield the best results. And regardless of these smaller intermediary changes, what we're trying to do is learn. And again, huge shout out to Hayley in our private group. She graduated from being a student to one of our higher members here because of this chart. Beautiful spot as well. Worked out perfectly. We had a low volume spring. She nailed that. One of the fun parts is that because this transitory moment of like 80 days is relatively unimportant in the large grand scheme of things, you know that you should be still executing a month-over-month strategy of accumulation if you're under 70, right? That's basically my guess. Now, if you've made yourself extraordinarily wealthy, you've got over hundreds of millions of dollars, your strategy of life should probably be a bit different. I would think you should be focused on like being closer to nature, meditating, mountain climbing, whatever things you might want to do with a day-over-day basis. But anyways, the point of this is, if you really zoom out and measure out this thesis, an average person can achieve extraordinary results without trying, and you don't need to know what the price is. You can basically ignore it. Okay, on to the next thing. Ethereum, EIP 1559, where is this? It's coming up here in a few days. Why Ethereum's upgrade going live would make Ethereum more valuable. Again, for those of you that don't know, this will effectively aim to burn approximately 1% to 2% of the Ethereum each year that are mined. That's around 3 million Ethereum, with around a current 113 million market supply or circulating supply of Ethereum on the market. So this will effectively create a deflationary process for the Ethereum token itself, and then allow the gas fees that are being burned to be paid to the stakers as they move into the proof of stake system instead of the miners, again, increasing another way to reward those who are staked in the system. So is this going to have a massive effect on the price? Well, we're actually probably seeing it already. Part of the effect that we're seeing on the price is likely happening already. Now, one of the interesting parts that I wanted to go over here was the potential for this falling wedge is actually shown up in a bunch of areas. Now, I want to go over here kind of really quickly. I won't spend too much time here, but here, a falling wedge on Solana. Okay, well, do we see falling wedges anywhere else? Okay, potentially here on 1 inch as well. What about Serum? Oh, hey, look at that. Serum, also falling wedge breakout as well. Low volume spring, it looks like. What's interesting is that when you start to see the markets move, my favorite aspect of the heuristic of the composite operator is that, and people always wonder this too, but why does when Bitcoin moves, all the other things move? Well, you're dealing with a very small system. First off, the crypto sector is not the biggest in the world. It's quite small. Relatively speaking. By itself, it's a standalone. It's extraordinary. It's a monolith of its own creation. Decentralized finance is fantastically exciting. But people get scared and get greedy almost all at the same times. And we do that by measuring the VIX, the volatility index. And one of the things that we've been noticing is that there's a lot of conversation trying to build fear around this new Delta variant. First off, you shouldn't be scared. We've got early stage treatment. It's really easy to deal with. I won't go too much into it. We'll probably start another podcast for these conversations. But effectively, we are seeing a little bit of fear move up, probably unnecessarily so. So I think we're going to get one more spike of fear, probably in a very short order here. It'll likely bode short-term negative for Bitcoin's price. Again, somewhere between this $34,000 to $40,000 area. As long as we stay above the $33,000 point of control, we're golden, ladies and gentlemen. So that's nice to see. Ethereum, on the other hand, I'm very, very interested to see how this EIP 1559 works out. For those of you that want to know my long-term thoughts here, just go back and look at what happens on the daily. On the daily, one of the things we try to constantly repeat is that your entries are more important than your exits, right? So say you started buying Ethereum up here. You're like, yeah, this is like the gangster spot. Ethereum's going to change the world. The problem is you didn't make any entries down here. So you're like, well, Tio, I can't reverse back into history. I can't make entries in the past. So what do I do today? Well, you start the thesis doing the exact same thing. Every month you execute on what you can afford with inside of your revenue, your budget strategy to accumulate. You should do that every day or every month you can when you're under 70 years old, and you should do that until you're about 70. When you're 70, you can sit and contemplate and meditate for 10 hours a day and live off your breath for all I care. After 70, it's free game. You can do whatever you want. Before that, though, you probably should be working and building things that are valuable for other people. So we go back, we look at the accumulation range of this, for those of you that are studying Wykoff, which we are a huge fan of here in the den. Look at this beautiful spring. Look at this perfect trading range we had, this perfect SOS and LPS, SOS, LPS, and this massive move that came afterwards. Making entries into here are more important than making entries into way up here, right? There's still a lot of potential for downside here. We have no real support back until like $800. So even though Ethereum has a lot of room for upside, the risk to the downside is high. So I wouldn't be trying to execute all-in buy strategies here. But the thesis for just buy on a month-over-month basis and accumulate what you can afford in your revenue strategy, that should be executing all days, all months, no matter what the price is doing. You should effectively not care about the price in your internal thesis for an accumulation strategy. If you think 1 inch is going to be the shit, the price should basically be unimportant to you. You should go, great, it's the 11th of the month. I'm buying an extra XXXXX of 1 inch or whatever fits your budget. So back into the general markets, the dollar, the US dollar, the DXY hit the top of its trading range and has turned around. Again, very nicely aligned with Bitcoin's price movement to the upside. The S&P 500 has been impressive. Now, we've been following this trading range here. We were a little worried about distribution taking place here. It instantly recovered all of that. It's hard to say that the markets are going to go down. I'm standing by my thesis that we're going to see a basically only up moment for probably another, maybe even the next 5 to 10 years. We are in la la land, and there's no reason for us to leave la la land. Now, that's probably one of the hardest parts of this conversation, is that when you zoom out and you look at the history of the S&P 500, this was a long time coming. This accumulation range here between 1996 and 2016 basically was what is this? Yeah, you're looking at around a 15-year accumulation cycle. When we know that if you took 15 years to accumulate, you should probably have at least 3 to 7 outside of a breakout. And we are only about 3 years into this. So we could assume that this is you're getting into more worrying territory here, but let's say we go out 6,000 days instead of the 3,000. So we go closer to the 12 to 15 year mark, something like this. This is where I think we're going to start to see probably another doubling of the S&P 500, which is going to bode well for all other assets. They're going to keep pouring US dollars into assets because the US dollar is effectively worthless, and the only thing that's valuable is an asset. You should keep that in mind. Again, Bitcoin makes a better asset than the S&P 500, but we have to remember that the Bitcoin market is not a standalone product. The entire market cycle and market sphere itself is interacting with people's human psychology, and we can roughly guess that if they're just going to keep printing, that the markets are just going to keep going up. And we've shared this a few times before by comparing it to the monetary stock from the Federal Reserve. And as you can see, you basically see a perfect parallel, this orange line being the amount of money being printed and the growth of the markets in short subsequent order. Are they going to keep printing? Yes, there's no other choice. If they stop, we basically go into global free fall and worldwide decline because there's not enough monetary velocity moving into the system to pay people daily wages so they keep showing up at any kind of job that they do. If we stop that velocity, we're going back to the 1800s real damn fast. Now, we could get there from a solar flare, from an asteroid. There are things that could reverse all of what I'm saying in a very short order, but let's not think that's what's about to happen. And we'll move on and then we'll look at the NASDAQ. So we'll kind of finalize with the NASDAQ today. Again, we see some fairly powerful moves considering we're outside of the box, but you could again be witnessing an upthrust after distribution. We are still in phase C for both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. So I'm going to want to keep a closer eye on what happens here because again, we do not live in a bubble of our own. What's going to take place in the broader markets will also affect the Bitcoin market as well. People are like, well, Bitcoin's a hedge against inflation. Well, not really. Bitcoin is an asset class unto its own. It's not designed just about inflation. It's designed to be a different differentiation between the loss of confidence in a currency. And currently, people believe whatever they're told on the damn news. So the confidence is still strong, even though it should not be. Wile E. Coyote ran off the cliff, has not looked down, and therefore is not falling. It seems like Wile E. Coyote only fell when he looked down. If Wile E. Coyote had just kept looking forward and running, he would have been fine. That's what appears to be happening in the markets. People are not looking down and everything appears to be going as normal. So again, I'm not going to think that this is turning into distribution quite yet. It could just be a move to another market cycle high. We could see that again for another few years. Now, the other possibility here is that we actually see a longer, more broader spectrum accumulation for the NASDAQ, for the S&P 500, and you see a larger trading range that takes place. More volatility would ensue. But aside from that, it's too early to tell. And our thesis of only up due to the only option of money printing seems to be holding water, and we're farther into this than I ever thought we would get. Remember that this thesis has been running since 2016 and has continued to work. Meanwhile, you have YouTube channels talking about the stock market crashes every week, the global financial crisis every other week. Well, guess what? We're still going up. Why? Well, the confidence hasn't been lost in the dollar. Why would confidence be lost in the dollar? They seem to believe the politics. They seem to believe the propaganda. So therefore, yay, there's confidence. Wile E. Coyote hasn't looked down. The dollar continues to be strong, or at least strong enough to support this ecosystem. Anyways, we'll leave it at that. Again, one more shout out to our private member, Hayley, for nailing this one. Big congratulations on your graduation hat there. That was fantastic. We love learning. Okay. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you've been enjoying this content. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit that little bell. I'm going to just go over a few thoughts and questions today, and we'll go from there. So Boris says, I just started reading 100 Baggers. It is an absolutely phenomenal book. I suggest everyone who likes to read that. If you don't like to read, try the audiobook. Nick Demaria says, so when it comes to dollar cost averaging, do you scale down the amount of fiat you spend each time you buy as the price rises? No, it should be the same. It should be the same. My estimate is it should be the same. It should be what you can afford to budget in your month-over-month basis. Now, once you have built an accumulation strategy, you can also then distribute, right? So if you had been accumulating all through 2017, 18, and 19, when you see highs, you should then also be selling equivalents to what your monthly entries were, right? So say you were buying, just as an easy number, 1 Bitcoin per month through 2017 to 2019, approximately, right? When you go up, you should still also be basically buying and selling at your effective rate. So had you been buying 1 Bitcoin at a low, you should sell a few. I aim at basically only 3 to 5 years of operating capital, because then whatever else I have in my portfolio, I know I don't need to touch. So everyone's different, but that's it's my best way to go, is distribute what you need to operate for the next 3 to 5 years of whatever it is you do in life. And then you're good to go. You can continue to accumulate, right? You can use that money to accumulate on what your monthly budget is. So you should be writing into your monthly budget what your accumulation strategy is. Okay, next questions. My poop hurts says, and that's a funny name, says, you have pretty eyes. Oh, thank you. Alex Kushner, it's great to see you, Alex. Alex, how are you not, I don't know how Alex is not a moderator in the chat here. We're gonna have to fix that real fast. Okay, there you go, Alex. You're now a moderator. I can't believe that took so long. Alex says, will the alts follow always, or will they eventually get decoupled? Well, you can't just broad spectrum force a bunch of ideas in there together. What will flow are the things that are working and interesting. So no, a lot of them will become worthless over time, effectively, right? but what you will see is a general movement of the markets together. So what alts or what digital assets perform more effectively are really dependent on which ones that are producing the most likely products. We've got a podcast with Terra Luna that comes out on Wednesday. We got a podcast with Insurace that comes out today. So the idea here is, well, which ones will be the winners overall? Well, we don't know, but we do know that we're going to get some wrong. So tails, I only lose a little, but you have to at least find the interest into the ones you think will be successful long term. Now, again, this is kind of a broad spectrum question, Alex, but will all of the altcoins follow the market? Yes, to some degree, but the ones that will perform the best are the ones that have a real adoption and use case. And that can shift dramatically over the next few years. We really, really are going to be having to pay close attention and continuing to invest. So it's fun, it's exciting that way. Jeremy Waterman says, I would look terrible if I hadn't implemented a dollar cost added strategy the past 2 months. James Demore says, I love you, Tio. Love you guys as well. Tino Troll says, good morning, Tio. Hope you had a great weekend. I did. I went out to 2 different volcanoes this weekend. It was fantastic. What are your thoughts on hyperdeflation and its effect on legacy assets? I'm a big proponent of deflation. Again, I think that technology inherently creates a deflationary scenario. So it's hard to measure, very hard to measure the rate at which deflationary technology is growing. I don't know the answer to that, but it could be as quickly as we can print money. So we're going to have to keep we're just going to watch the story develop. I actually don't know what's going to happen there, but we can definitely see that technology is growing so quickly to the point where we could have infinite energy, and that would basically change everything. Do you have an idea of what possible deflationary scenario could look like? What could trigger it? Well, look, deflationary, if you've been listening to our show, we've been highly focused on it because your cell phone is extraordinarily deflationary. Think about how many products and services you used to buy that are all now on your cell phone. Like, I don't even pay to use the actual cell phone anymore because it's useless. I would rather use WhatsApp or Messenger or Skype or something, right? So technology is always making things cheaper and easier to access. That is deflation, and that is the strongest force of deflation that we see. Just finished Hunter Baggers. It was great. 77 says, can you do another interview with Cliff High? I'm going to try to start another podcast channel so that we can do stuff like that, but currently I don't think we'll be able to run it from Arcane Bear. We're going to stay just strictly focused on venture capital here with Arcane Bear. That way we can maintain the conversations center. Maybe we'll start another podcast so that we can have Cliff High on again, because I love those conversations and I like weird people. James Moore says, what if ETH doesn't drop and it keeps going up this week with a low average? Should I keep accumulating every month? Again, any asset that you're interested in, you should accumulate every month. Doesn't matter what the price is at. That stays the same. That is like, you can just write that. You can write that down as a thesis and it will work. Now, the only way it doesn't work is if you get it wrong. But you shouldn't just be investing only in one thing either. You should know that you can get it wrong. Tails, I only lose a little. But over time usually proves how right you can be. And from there, you can make better, consistent entries because time will show you the price. Ethereum could go up to 10 grand and come flying back down to 1,000. Right? Very, very possible. Cash Flow says, how do I prevent FOMO? Meditation and exercise. It's the best way to do that. We need to decentralize big tech and social media. 100% I agree with this. Rex Banner says, I hope we get to see the new advances in energy technology. I agree with that. One of the most unique deflationary potentials there, to kind of backtrack on this conversation, would be the production of infinite energy or infinite electricity, where it costs almost nothing to produce something. That would change the game of value and price as the way we know it. So energy technology is the most important conversation in our next few decades. Soul Rise has been moving healthily. Thanks again for the pick. Oh yeah, for those of you that are part of our private group, maybe I'll go over this really quickly. Again, we are really focused on venture capital. So Soul Rise, since our early entries here, is up around 50%. Just kind of following the rest of the market. Let's see. Oh yeah, Fever too has been doing quite well. So back over to Fever. Fever, since our first start of the investment in Fever, is already up 10x in less than 24 days. So for those of you that were in the private group that played along with us in that one, congratulations on the easy 10x. I do suspect we're actually going to go higher, but that's a longer story. As you can see, what appears to be happening is another very short-term falling wedge scenario. We've just broken above that wedge, so it would be nice to close above 1 penny. And then we'll likely see further upside, although I do see the 23.9B bot selling. This is kind of one of the lead drivers of the market. I like DEX tools for this, as I can see who's buying and selling. And 23.9B here is moving a fair amount of capital around. We're talking about $100,000 in and out each time. At the bare minimum, probably actually even more. I'm just roughly estimating. So that's kind of fun to see. So yeah, lots of growth in the ecosystem still, highly entertaining. So stoked for those of you that got in on some of those. Let's take a look at a few more of your guys' thoughts and questions, and then we'll kind of lead out for the rest of the day here. Hey, love, show your thoughts on Splinterlands. Kev, tell you what I'll do. We'll work to get that in our group the next while. Daniel, if you're listening, please reach out to Warren. Let's line up a conversation about Splinterlands with them, primarily speaking. Thank you, Daniel. You're awesome. Let's see. Alex says, any altcoins you love or want to cover for the audience? Oh, I'm still a huge fan of Avalanche. Yeah, Avalanche I think is highly, I've been accumulating a bit more Avalanche in these prices. It's just trying to level out my secondary entry. But yeah, I'm still a big fan of Avalanche. And a few others, but we'll try to find a better way to go over and maybe do deep dives into each of these thoughts. We're building that out on the website. You can go check it out, where we've just been doing our kind of early tertiary research into companies. And we give all that away for free. But it will go into private mode, where there'll be a lot of the data you can't access, like our information about distribution, OFAC, all that fun stuff. That will be all part of the private group. But we'll continue to do free stuff for everyone as well. Okay, next question. Grow Easy says, Arcane, I'll stay in the north, the Marriott of Orth for a couple of weeks. Would love to meet up. If you want to do that, you can fire me a message on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. On the questions down below. I guess I'm going to need to change this because we are now just at Arcane Bear on Twitter as well. So you can follow us on Twitter. You can try to DM us there, and we usually try to meet. We've met up with a bunch of the Bear family along the way. Some of them accidentally. You'd be surprised how many people I meet accidentally. You're like, oh my God, it's Arcane Bear. I'm like on the beach in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, holy wow, it's crazy how big this community is. So yeah, always happy to meet up. Do you have meditation or yoga recommendations? Ooh. First off, let's start with meditation. Just sit down, close your eyes, and whatever happens, happens. That's it. That's my meditation practice. Yoga, it's really difficult because what you want to learn how to do is go from pose to pose. Like you want to go from like a downward dog into like a cat prayer pose, into like cobra, and it's the discovery of the range of motion in between each of the yoga postures. I think that's the most enveloping, and that's about really playing with each posture, right? So if you get on the floor and just kind of like roll around, you'll find out where your body wants to move. And I think that the discovery process of how your body feels is what asana, which was what a lot of people call yoga or posture exercise, is really what you're looking for, that range of motion. Like what happens if you push your arm out and then like move down one finger at a time, or like do this kind of stuff, right? All the mudras. Like what happens if you push your hand out this way and then you close one finger down at a time? You get to feel all those muscles move as individuals. It's the exploration of the body's ability to be somewhere. I think that yoga is really about. And there's no really great lesson for that other than just sitting down and trying to discover what happens if I move my hand out this way and I start to change my fingers, or if I lean my head against that. I think that like proper asana and yoga is the discovery of oneself in space and time. Anyways, it's probably a little bit of a redundant conversation, but hopefully that was helpful. Any thoughts on alchemics? No, don't know what that is. What do you think of Harmony in one? Oh yes, Harmony or Fetch, Seller are all in our early venture capital basket. I'm just holding on to the rest of my positions for the next 10 years. We'll see what they do. I sold out at a good chunk of them, around 5 to 10x on most of them. So whatever I have left, I'm just keeping. I've walked away from. I've rewritten Wu Wei's thesis to be buy, sell principal, and walk away forever. I've got enough capital where I never need to take that out. So if I want, I'll buy more. But after we've taken out principal, I effectively walk away forever for now. So both are all one, Harmony, Seller, and Fetch are all walk away. Whatever. The amount that I own now will be the amount that I own for the next 10 years. If we have a big down cycle again, I'll buy a lot more of the things I'm interested in. But until then, I'm having a hard time figuring out where we are in the market. I believe we're still in the mid of the market, right? Ethereum could go up to 10 grand and come back down to 1,000. Could happen, right? So I'm not trying to throw everything into it at this particular moment. Yeah, we're friends with, I can get the Splinterland guys on. We're friends with some of their team-ish. The thesis is powerful. The best. Thank you guys. I appreciate all your support. Like-minded people end up in the same places. We agree. Will whales evacuate Bitcoin from Monero? No, never. That won't happen. You guys think Splinterlands will be bigger than Axie's? Great. I'm gonna definitely, I know we're friends with some of the guys that helped them start in their early days, so we'll get them on the call. Daniel, let's call Warren. We'll have him on call. It'll be fun. Rex Banner says, I hope our paths cross one day. It's been great being part of the Bear family. Happy influence, and I'm happy to be here. Great. Andy Lee says, from a registered yoga teacher, I believe that's what RYT stands for, great depiction of the benefits of asana, or asana. Yeah, thank you. I love discovering my body's movement through space. I think that's what yoga is best, or at least for me. Not because yoga just means union. Literally, it could be anything. Like this could be considered yoga. This is actually speech yoga. What I'm doing right now is discovering my ability to maintain connection with consciousness while speaking without knowing what I'm saying, to come to some type of conclusion, share that with you, but also at the same time be discovering something new for myself. You could call this speech yoga. So it fits under the same lines as asana, but it would be much closer, more related to like pranayama or breath yoga. Anyways, a longer conversation for those of you that are interested in what yoga is as an umbrella, or all the different limbs, because asana is just, or like posture or stretching is just one limb of yoga. There's 7 others that have nothing to do with the body. Like kirtan, for instance, is one of the limbs of yoga. It's entirely meditation through music, effectively. Smash the like button, Kev C says. Great to see everyone. Awesome. You guys are fantastic. I really appreciate the support today. Thank you all. It's always a pleasure. Again, give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Leave your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Share it with your family, your friends. I'm going to try to do more pre-recorded videos this week just to see if YouTube likes them more. I'm not even sure. We get more subscribers and our view count goes down. I've realized I'm really good at like not making sure a lot of people don't like me. I guess it's probably because I'm a very far out thinker as well. Like I'm a very fringe kind of scientist, and I will always be that way. So for those of you that support that part of me, thank you. For those of you that don't, well, I'm sorry you couldn't open your mind a little bit further. There's a lot of fun stuff to discover on the fringe. Anyways, this is Tio with the Arcane Bear. Oh, lastly, I see a few here. It says, Andy Ronan says, I've been subscribed for a few months now. Just curious, what is your background? I dropped out of school in grade 10. I started studying music and psychedelics. I did that for approximately 10 to 12 years, very quickly realizing that although I would make a good shaman, I wasn't scalable. I started to study sacred and psychedelic capitalism. My mentors around me have made billions of dollars doing that, and I am trying to find within myself that pathway. I'm trying to find within myself the idea of providing service and value to others. And that's what business became for me over the last, let's see, since I was around 26, 27, when I started my first business. My first business did very well. We were doing $50,000 to $60,000 a month. There's only 2 or 3 people working. So I've been in the business world for a little bit of time, but all my prerequisites are psychedelics and music, which is advanced pattern recognition and being able to think way outside of any box that exists. So that's my background. That's why I've been able to be good at what in this venture capital sector. I can think way outside of the box, which means I'm generally more akin to, let's say, a visionary, which is usually who you want to invest into, the people that think crazily far outside of the box. Yeah, anyways, I'll keep it at that. Thank you guys all for joining us today. I appreciate the support. It's Teal with the Arcane Bear. See if the guitar is in tune for a second. If, you know, I know you guys always like to lead out with some music. With the Arcane Bear. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you guys again on the next episode.